What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks, last episode of the week. Buck, how are you doing?
Man, great. I mean, DJ, we can talk about it. I mean, we talk about it on every podcast. Like, this is an exciting week. We got big game coming up on Sunday, Eagles and 49ers, but we got conference championship games that are also on the horizon. So to me, we talk about it, man, the closer we get to the tournament, the more excited I get, because I love seeing how players and coaches respond to the pressure of having to play and participate in these big moments.
I want to keep today's show college-based. We are going to have Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz, a former App State head coach, who's a friend of the show. He's done an unbelievable job turnaround there. How about this? From 5-5 his first year, 6-7, 6-7 this year, 10-2, second in the SEC East. An incredible turnaround performance as he's kind of recaptured the enthusiasm within that program, within that city. So looking forward to that conversation coming up in just a few minutes. But championship games, you mentioned it, Buck, this weekend. When you look at it, I was talking to a buddy the other day who was getting ready to go out and attend one of these games on the scouting side. And he can go to any game he wants. He has his choice. And think about this in years past when you've got Georgia, Alabama playing, which is it's a fantastic matchup. Then we've got Michigan, Iowa. You got Florida State, Louisville, Texas, Oklahoma. And you've got SMU, Tulane as well. But in a year where you've got Alabama and Georgia playing, and there's still a ton of NFL players in that field, don't get me wrong, stacked, loaded. He's going to go out and watch Washington versus Oregon because there's a boatload of NFL guys in that game out there in the Pac-12. Again, we talk about this all the time. Man, what a shame. The Pac-12 is falling apart just as they kind of found their stride here. But, man, that is a game that has the NFL's attention. Not only do you have the two quarterbacks there in Bo Nix and Penix, but you've got really good line play on both sides of the line. You've got receivers for both teams. Like, it is a good matchup there with a playoff spot on the line.
Good matchup. Big time rivalry. If you haven't spent any time in the Pacific Northwest, you don't understand like the hatred and the anger and the tension that exists between
not friendly
Oregon and UW. Like, there's something about the dogs and the ducks when they get together. It is not friendly. When you look at the way these teams are playing, I'll be honest, man, the way Oregon has played the last 5-6 games of the season, they have been running through opponents. Their physicality is overwhelming. They get it. They feed off their coach, Dan Lanning. I mean, it's there. It is fully visible for everyone to see. UW has a toughness about them, a grittiness about them that has always existed within that program. They kind of pride themselves in being the dogs. Like, they come after you. They're always in attack mode. And so now to run this back, even though UW won the first one, to run it back for the championship, the last championship in the Pac-12, this is going to be one that, look, this is going to be one for the ages.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. That is on Friday, December 1st. So looking forward to that. That's going to be in Las Vegas. So they're playing at Allegiant Stadium. Looking forward to that game Friday. Then we get Georgia, Alabama, which is a great contest as well. Iowa, I don't know if there's enough punch there offensively for Iowa to dethrone Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. But we'll have all those games broken down for you. We'll watch them. We'll evaluate them as we get to the draft. We'll be talking a lot about those players. But today's episode, it's not a long one, but it's a good one. And it's a good one because of our guest that we have getting ready to join us. He's the head coach at Missouri. He has done a phenomenal job turning around that program. He's a friend of ours. Always enjoy having him on. Here's our conversation with Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz. Coach, we appreciate it, man, taking some time for us today. First of all, what's this offseason like as you go into, recruiting really heavily as you try and finish up recruiting season with the product you have to sell coming off of the year you guys just had?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, college football's schedule has changed so much that we finished the regular season. We still have about 30 days before our bowl game, yet every player on your roster is a free agent right now. And so, we spent 4 days. I've spent every day except for this 15-minute interview with y'all. I'm meeting with my players and talking about what is their future. Are they going to transfer? Do they want to stay? What is their role going to be? So that's kind of sped up. And then we spend the afternoon watching portal film or high school recruits because now you've got to rebuild your 85 roster. So, it's an interesting time. I will say this, recruiting is all about selling either what you plan on to do or what you've done in the past. The previous 3 years I was selling what I was planning on doing. This year we're being able to sell tangible results. And And, we had a 3,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard receiver, a 1,000-yard rusher. I think we're the only school in the SEC to do that. I could be wrong on that. But, we've got a very dynamic offense. On defense, we're going to have another defensive end drafted. We had 3 first-team all-conference SEC players on that side of the ball. So we have a lot of really positive momentum. My message to every recruit and whether it's in the portal or out is Mizzou provides you a lot of stability in the midst of chaos. And if you look at whether it's market history or the past, wherever you can find a stable place in the midst of chaos, that's where the most growth is going to happen. And we believe these guys have an opportunity to really grow. You can tell right behind me, our number one goal is chase 2 dreams. We want our guys to be able to chase the dream of playing in the NFL, but we also want them to chase a dream of having a purpose outside of the game of football. And I think at Mizzou, we sell that opportunity at a really high level.
Coach, the game has changed so much. Like when DJ and I and yourself, when we were coming out of school, it was about being a student athlete, getting your education. People talked about the degree. It seems like the degree part has been diminished when you're talking about opportunities and those things because of NIL. So as a coach and as a leader of young people, how do you still show them that you care about them beyond football, while also having to navigate the transfer portal and free agency, as you talk about? It just seems like college football is at a crossroads because it's no longer the college football that we all knew and loved coming up.
Yeah, it's not. But I think in the middle of the whole thing, you have to start with loving your players. You have to start with what it's really all about. And the reason why I got into coaching had nothing to do with the amount of money they pay me, nothing to do with the big stadiums. It had to do with the desire to really impact young people's lives. And man, I lost my way for a little bit the last 2 years like that. I was always stressed and consumed about all those other things. But man, this year it's been about my players. And I think so many times, like everybody's chasing this NIL, which is good, man. I'm all for these guys. I think they deserve absolutely. I wish we'd get to a revenue share model. That's a whole nother conversation. But the most valuable thing they're going to get from the University of Missouri is not the NIL. It's going to be that degree, because the degree has earning power for 60 years. NIL is a one-time earning power opportunity. And so they have to combine that. Like, it is a lot of money that these guys are getting, which is, again, awesome. But it's not going to compare to the millions of dollars that they're going to earn based off having a college degree and the connections that we can provide through the university. And so, again, for us, that's just a huge emphasis. It's a huge emphasis of finding a purpose outside of the game. We all know the game is going to end for everybody at some point. Look at Tom Brady. It finally ended for him last year, but he has a bigger purpose than just the game. And I want all my guys to find that.
One of the things that we always talk about here when we're talking about evaluating, we can all watch the tape and say this guy can play, this guy can't play. It's a lot more. It's the makeup on guys that ends up determining how successful they're going to be. I know it's the same with you when you're recruiting these high school kids or transfer portal kids. I was talking to a GM the other day, and they were playing a bunch of rookies. And I said, what's the key to getting these young guys out in the field and playing well? And he said, we had to identify guys who love it and guys that can learn it. And I know how hard that is at the NFL level to do that with college kids. How in the world are you able to find out if a 17, maybe you start recruiting him when he's 16, that they love it? And then how do you get the information to know that they're going to be able to learn what you're going to ask them to do?
I think it's actually easier to find out if they love it, because you can wade through the BS of recruiting. I told the kid yesterday on the phone, man, recruiting's not real. Okay. Like the day you step foot on campus, none of the recruiting matters. It's going to matter if you show up on time to weights. That's what's going to determine whether or not you're successful. And what people post on Twitter is not going to be motivation for you to show up and work out, because you're going to be doing up downs if people are late. So like, I don't really care about the recruiting stuff. And guys that are constantly consumed with recruiting and their announcements and all those different things, those are the guys that you first go, I don't know. I don't know if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. We actually have a saying right now. I read this article about 3 weeks ago, mercenaries versus rusty trucks. You got sports cars out there that look good and they drive fast, but man, are they going to always be reliable? That old rusty truck that Daniel and I used to have to drive around in North Carolina, man, that thing got you where you needed to go. It showed up. It had a purpose. It was driven. It didn't matter what the road conditions were. It was going to show up. I got one of those guys right now, Cody Schrader, our running back. I mean, he's a rusty truck guy. Now, he's plenty talented, don't get me wrong, but he's the definition of toughness, determination, and mindset over talent. And I think that's a combination that we all have to continue to look for. The learning part of it, I put that on our coaching staff. I think a poor worker complains about his tools. I think as coaches, you got to take ownership of making sure that what you need those guys to do, you find a way to teach it. Because at the end of the day, football is still blocking and tackling. And if it's so complicated that you can't figure out the combo coverage and the checks after the motions and all that, that ain't on them. That's on you trying to have the perfect call every time on both sides of the ball. Like, it's still moving a guy against his will on the offensive side of the ball. It's still on the defensive side of the ball, hands inside, 3-point or triple extension at the hips, shock and shed, and then have the courage to make contact and make a tackle. If all that other stuff's getting in the way, we got to change a little bit of what we're doing coaching.
Coach, I'm fascinated by this because obviously I grew up playing in the ACC, but the conversation about the SEC has existed since the beginning of time. Yeah. Now that you're in the conference, you've been in it before as an assistant, but now back as a head coach. What is the outside world missing about the differences in coaching and playing in the SEC versus other places?
See, this is funny because Kirby gets on game day the other day and was like, hey, if you want some of this SEC, come get it. Here's the difference for me. And I was in the ACC for 3 years, and it was a great conference, okay? And I got nothing negative to say. But the difference is when we're playing Kentucky or we're playing South Carolina or we're playing Florida this year, and those guys, Kentucky's a bowl-eligible team. South Carolina and Florida end up not quite making it, even Arkansas. Mm-hmm. Every one of those teams have multiple NFL players on their roster that are going to be drafted first, second, third round. I mean, you could talk about Spencer Rattler's probably a second-round drafted quarterback, and they didn't make a bowl game, okay? Mm-hmm. They got multiple defensive tackles who are going to play in the league. That doesn't happen at every conference. The depth of talent on every team is what's different. I mean, I just don't think people understand that. And it's not just, this year they have this guy. That's a freshman who in 2 years is going to be guys, if this conversation doesn't start and stop with every player on the Georgia's defense in 2021 was drafted, that's what makes this league different. I played against coached against a really, really, really good Clemson team. They had 5 players on defense drafted. And that's totally different.
Yeah, that's insane. I'll give you a quick anecdote on that. I'm going through watching these offensive linemen, and they got Mims, the ginormous tackle at Georgia. So he's hurt. He's beat up a little bit, Buck, this year. So watch a couple games, and then buddies were like, hey, you got to go watch him last year when he's healthy. And so anyways, I'm bouncing between last year and this year. And so I get to this year, I guess it was maybe Tennessee, and they honor their lineman who passed away. So they changed their number for that game. So I'm watching. I'm like, where is this guy? He's not playing. They got this other huge kid in there, like number 77. And I'm on the phone with a buddy, and he goes, no, that's him. He goes, the sad thing, it was believable to you that they got another 6'7", 350-pound kid that they just swapped out. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't even bat an eye. I thought they just keep turning these guys out. But Coach, to me, that's also the difference. As you talked about the defensive tackles at some of these schools. The trenches, as much as you can talk about skill guys, quarterbacks, receivers, DBs, all that stuff, isn't this still the same game it's always been where you win with those big guys? Yeah,
it's a line of scrimmage league. Both sides of the ball are very good. And I will say this about Georgia. I think Kirby, for whatever reason, we overvalue the amount of talent that he's acquired. He's doing a hell of a job coaching. I mean, we've had him twice in the fourth quarter, and we couldn't break him. I mean, those guys do not beat themselves. For him to be on the streak that they're on, he's got an unbelievable coaching staff, and I think Kirby's done a really good job with his culture too. Just a lot of respect for him because it's not just the talent. But you're absolutely right. The lines of scrimmage are just elite in this league, and I think that's a real challenge for everybody.
Okay, well, let me ask a quick follow-up. Sorry, Buck.
Yeah.
With the two new teams coming in, with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, we've talked about it from a scouting standpoint. With those teams going to the Big Ten from the West Coast, and with those two teams coming in there, we think it's going to make our job a little bit easier, just because as good as those leagues are, now you guys are even getting stronger in terms of evaluating your own roster. I mean, there's no layups. Like, it's got to make it a little bit easier to know what you have early on in the season as you go throughout it.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about how college football is going to be shaped now is you're going to have to win 16 to 17 games in order to win a championship. And our rosters aren't really built for that. And there's no really way to bring guys in, like in the NFL. So that's going to be an interesting thing. I think you're kind of seeing that right now in the college football playoff. Like, are these teams really the best team when they're injured? They're beat up. Are they still going to be worthy of being the top four? It'll be interesting. I don't know. I don't think any of us really know. The craziest thing, and y'all will know better than we will, is I think these West Coast teams that are going to be traveling, how much does that travel impact their ability to play and compete at a high level? I mean, you're talking about Washington. I thought I saw on their schedule where they got to go to Penn State and Rutgers in the same season. Well, that's going to be interesting. And there's a different kind of cold when you go play Michigan in November than when you. I mean, I know it's cold in LA, but it's going to be different when you roll up into Michigan in November.
Coach, you brought up something that I really hadn't thought about when you talk about, like, if you do the entire marathon, you're talking about 15, 16 games. In your mind, does it change the way that you have to go about practice? Because in the NFL, they have certain things where, hey, you only have 14 padded days. You kind of do things for the players. Yeah. Well, now for you, does that mean, hey, I probably need to start thinking about, if we're good, how's it going to be when you get to week 11 and 12 practicing your team?
Yeah, that's actually something that we looked at this year, because we have a veteran team. We have some guys that have some miles on them from a GPS data and from a play number standpoint. And I think you absolutely have to balance your veterans and how much you're going to put wear and tear on those guys versus developing your younger guys on the team, because they still need those reps. So it's a balancing act. We got an older veteran named Theo Weiss who had an outstanding season. But we noticed, like, early in the year, like, guys, he can't run 5,000 yards on Tuesday. Like, if he does that, then we ain't going to have him on Friday. And we have a saying around here, fresh horses run fast races. So you got to get your horses to the race fast, but there's still a physical nature to the game that you have to have. And so I honestly think that's where really good coaches figure it out. It ain't a science. It's a feel. It's like a good cook. You got to figure out each team, each roster, each game's got to be managed just a little bit different. You got to know what the main ingredients are. The main ingredients for this team, we got to have hands inside. We got to do Mizzou drill on Tuesday where our mindset's right. But on Wednesday, we might need to back it off a little bit. Let's have a great walkthrough on Thursday. Let's be full speed on Friday.
I love that. Last one from me, Coach. We appreciate your time today. But as somebody who has a reputation for being creative and always kind of on the cutting edge of what you're doing offensively, I'm always curious, like, who are some of the other guys that you look at? Is there stuff, I know maybe it's difficult, obviously, during the season, but when you get a minute to take a breath, are there guys you enjoy studying and picking up a thing or two? Like, who are some of these innovators? Who are some of the guys that you respect and you like to dig in and study?
Yeah, honestly, in the NFL game, we run so much outside zone that I'm constantly wanting to watch Dwayne Ledford at Atlanta. I think he does a great job. But scheme-wise, the Dolphins are doing some unbelievable stuff. Obviously, Shanahan's always on the cutting edge of what he's trying to do. You got to throw Coach McVay in there, and I don't even know these guys. I just watch them from afar. You're always keeping in track of what Andy Reid's doing. But then in my mind, I also understand that the NFL is a totally different game than ours. And so sometimes the field spacing and all that doesn't translate. So then you go into it, I have a great respect for Coach Riley, both of them, both Lincoln and Garrett. So I peek those games. I peek guys that have worked with me in the past, Bush, Hamden at Boise, to see what he's doing. PFF's awesome. I just pull all the explosive plays from the previous week and watch them on Tuesdays just to see what's the exciting thing that's going on. And different guys will catch your eyes every week. The biggest thing that I've learned over my course of time is just because it's a good play for them, you got to figure out what's the why. Why were they running the play? Why did they think that was going to work? Like, what did they set up in the previous weeks that made that as a compliment? And you got to strip it down to what's their DNA. But there is some guys out there that are really doing some exciting stuff. And I would say it starts with, for us, basing everything off our outside zone scheme and then going from there.
Well, that is fantastic, Coach. You've been generous with your time, man. Appreciate all you've done. Appreciate what you did for my school. That unbelievable time you had there at App. Yeah. We're still in the day. We're still in a championship game, baby. We got a big one.
Hey, man, if Sean Clark's not Coach of the Year, I mean, crud, y'all. Those fans in App, man, I love them and they're passionate. But they had him buried and dead.
I know.
that dude just went.
Yeah. He's the Undertaker.
Go. Now
he was the Undertaker. He just flipped. He
so
just
proud
flipped
of him.
right back up.
Yeah,
you can't keep You can't keep us down, Buck.
No, but he lost 2 of his best players at the end of spring, and it always takes a little time to build your team back. But man, I'm really proud of Sean, and I loved my time at App State. Dr. Furman just meant so much to me. Doug Gillen was so great. Sherry Everts was great, but man, I still have, I talk with Sean Clark at least 2 times a week. Really proud of him, and man, there is no doubt. We're saying roll Nears, man. Let's roll.
There we go. There he is. Well, hey, it's talking about turning something around. You've got the Missouri program rolling right now, coming off double-digit wins here with 1 to go. Appreciate your time, Coach, and let's catch up down the road.
Sounds good. MIZ.
All right, Buck. There he is. Eli Drinkwitz, always dropping some wisdom and some knowledge on us. Took some notes there. It was fresh horses run fast again. That's my favorite takeaway line from this one, but a lot to learn in that conversation.
Yeah, a lot to learn. He's done a really good job. And I think it took him a few years to kind of settle in and kind of figure out the landscape in the SEC and figure out how he wanted to go about it. Because remember, look, he'd been a coach for 1 year at App State before he got the job at Mizzou. So he's still learning how to do it. And he's talked about it. He gave up play calling duty so he could kind of oversee the entire operation. And man, it's really fallen into place for them. This is a team that is tough. They're rugged. He's done a really good job with that offense, but defensively is where Missouri has always buttered their bread. And once again, their defense is tough. Having watched them, I watched them twice. I watched them play Georgia early in the year, and then I watched them recently against Florida. I mean, this is a tough physical team. They got the requisite pieces that we talk about when it comes to being a team that can participate in the college football playoff. It's all right there. We'll see if he can keep it going, but this team is close.
Yeah, it's a good lesson too in making progress and being patient. This thing doesn't happen overnight. It took him a few years to get over the hump and really turn the corner, and that happened this year. And it looks like Missouri football is in great shape going forward. Top 10 team in the nation right now. Pretty incredible. All right, that is going to do it for us today. A short episode, a brief episode, but hope you enjoyed it. And I do want to, again, thank Eli Drinkwitz for joining us. We will see you next week, 5 days a week, right here on Move the Sticks.